You've had such an inspiring and incredible career so far to get where you have done. So if someone's, let's say, 10 years into their career and they're wondering whether they've got what it takes to get to the top, what would you say to them?
I spent too many years of my career maybe trying to be good at everything until I discovered my secret sauce.
Today's guest is McDonald, CEO of Daiwa Capital Markets Europe. She shares her journey from spending 2 decades at Standard Bank Group to leading a Japanese investment bank in London.
A rule that I try and live by, which is surround yourself with people who know more than you about certain subjects. It's not money that should keep someone at a firm, because there's always somebody else willing to pay more. And conversely, what makes somebody leave is if they feel that they are not being given an opportunity to develop to their full potential. But what makes somebody go further than somebody else? And for me, I've settled on one thing. It's the ability to learn and grow from feedback.
Is there anything that you wish someone had told you earlier on in your career, or that you would go back and tell yourself?
20 years in one organization may seem extraordinarily long, but as I went through the process, I found 2 things that resonate with me in terms of me as a person and the roles that attract me. One is
Megan, welcome to the show. Thanks very much for your time. Love to hear a bit more about you today. Could you start by telling us a bit about you and what you're up to at the moment?
Thank you, Bill. It's good to be speaking with you today. I'm currently the CEO for Daiwa Capital Markets Europe, based in London. Daiwa, or DCME as we call it, is the EMEA-based business for the Daiwa Securities Group, which is one of the largest brokerage and security services groups in Japan. And basically, I look after the EMEA region, based in London, as I said, and we have about 400 people across London, Frankfurt, Paris, and Bahrain.
Well, thank you. Really looking forward to hearing more about the journey. So where did it start for you then, Megan? I can tell your accent isn't London originally, so would love to hear a bit about your background and where it all began.
Yeah, it began, you're right, I'm South African by birth. It began for me on a farm. I grew up on a farm in the eastern corner of South Africa near Mozambique. My father was a farmer. He grew mangoes, other fruits and vegetables for export to the UK market. It was a lovely childhood. We grew up in a very sort of sheltered time. I have 2 brothers. We roamed around the farm every day in the sunshine. But really, I come from a non-traditional family, in the sense of nobody in my family had been to university or had a career in finance. And as I say, I grew up on a farm in a very rural part of South Africa.
Wow. So from a very rural farm in South Africa to what you're doing now, how did finance come on your radar? And what was your inspiration for looking at that as a career?
And finance was never on my radar. I didn't know much about finance, and neither did my family. My father was a wonderful man, but he was a farmer. My mother was a housewife. So nobody in my family had been to university. I'm the youngest. My brothers hadn't graduated from university. And so finance was never a career that I'd been exposed to or considered. I wanted to be a lawyer. I guess I grew up in the time of LA Law and these television shows about how glamorous it is on television to be a lawyer. So I had my heart set on a legal career, and I went to university and I studied law. I studied accounting as well. I became a lawyer in Johannesburg, and this was the early 2000s, where the bond market in South Africa was at the early stages of development. And I was working in a law firm very early on in my career, newly qualified lawyer. And I was working in one of the big law firms in Johannesburg, and we happened to work with Standard Bank on the first corporate bond program ever in South Africa. And we were the lawyers, and Standard Bank Global Markets team were the lead arrangers. And about 6 months after we worked on that transaction, they called me up and said, "We have an opening for a lawyer on our desk in the fixed income business. Would you like to join us. And at that point in time, I still wanted to be a lawyer, but I thought, let me go to an investment bank for 3 years and I can see the transactions from the other side, learn a little bit more about how the banks think about these transactions, and then go back to being a lawyer in a law firm, which is, I saw myself as a partner in a law firm. And as they say, life had other plans, because more than 25 years later, I'm still in investment banking and never regretted it for one moment.
Wow. And making that transition, how far into that would you say was the moment where you thought, this is for me, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, and I have to give the credit to somebody else for that, because I started with Standard Bank as a lawyer and we did some really interesting structures. The asset-backed market was getting going, so we did the first residential mortgage-backed security, and I worked. Some of the structures that we came up with are still in existence today, which I really enjoy reflecting on. So we were doing things for the very first time in that market. And I still thought, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to continue down this path. And then my boss at the time said, the CEO of the corporate and investment bank, a guy called Ben Kruger, he wants to have a coffee with you. And I said, but he doesn't even know who I am. I'm just some lawyer on the desk. Anyway, cutting a long story short, Ben said to me that in 18 months' time, I would be the successor to my boss as the head of the securitization team. Ben saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself. And he suggested to me that I move from being the lawyer on the desk to actually running the securitization business. And that planted a seed in my mind of thinking a bit more broadly about my career. And he saw leadership qualities in me, which again, I hadn't recognized in myself. And I'll forever be grateful to Ben for being, one of the key supporters in my career, and for, challenging me to grow and develop my potential.
Wow. What an opportunity to take that. It's something you obviously must have reflected on quite a lot over the years, that opportunity, and a real sliding doors moment for you.
It was, and there's also, whilst it was a wonderful opportunity, it came at a very difficult time, because I took over securitization around about 2006, 2007, global financial crisis. My predecessor got all the glory of growing a business, and I got the global financial crisis. So it was a real baptism of fire. In terms of my first leadership role, I was barely in the seat for a year, and then the global financial crisis hit. And as you well know, securitization and asset-backed securities were heavily in the eye of that storm, and we lost a lot of money. We had a lot of regulatory scrutiny, as most securitization businesses did around the world. I had to manage a team that were very anxious about their jobs and their roles. And so many things that I learned by walking through that fire for the first time have really shaped some of my leadership skills today. So whilst it was a wonderful opportunity, it came at a watershed moment, both for me personally, but kind of in the world, against the backdrop of the global financial crisis.
What as you say, back to the fire, but such a steep learning curve from a leadership perspective. So we come out of the financial crisis, and we start to move forward. What does that look like for you, your role, and where you were at that time in your career? And
what that looked like at that time, Bill, is that I spent 2 years post the global financial crisis restoring the business. And that was one of the sort of lessons that I learned, but also a leadership quality that I like to carry with me to this day, which is, I said to the team, we created this business together. I'm not leaving it in a bad state. I will stay and I will walk the journey with you until we restore it to financial health, which is what we did. And then I said to my bosses at the time, I want something else. I now want to be able to go and grow a business. I think another watershed moment which came to me during that first leadership experience was when I joined Standard Bank, and being a lawyer is kind of all about you. It's about what you can do, the structures you can come up with, and people look to you for advice and guidance on legal aspects. And then when you transition to a leadership role, it's not about you anymore. It's about your team. It's not about what you can achieve personally for yourself. It's actually, how do you motivate, lead, and inspire a team to do things which perhaps they never thought possible. And that was quite a seminal moment for me as well, switching from sort of that more solitary, it's what I can achieve on my own, to what I can achieve through working with a team. And there's a wonderful African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's something that's really stuck with me, which is really how I've then tried to develop my leadership skills, which is to hopefully inspire, motivate, and lead teams to achieve things that they never thought possible. Because I never thought it was possible for me, growing up on a farm in South Africa, to now be leading a business based in London.
So Megan, you spent over 20 years at Standard Bank. In this day and age, that's a really strong tenure with lots of people chopping and changing in their careers. What kept you with Standard Bank for so long across a lot of different roles and geographies?
Yeah, Bill, you're right. As you say, in today's day and age, 20 years in one organization may seem extraordinarily long. But what kept me at Standard Bank is that I kept getting opportunities to grow, to do different things, to develop skills that I never knew I had. So, going right back to the beginning, I joined Standard Bank as a lawyer. I thought I'd be a lawyer. Then I got offered the opportunity to run the securitization business. So moving from being a lawyer to actually leading a business, quite a big jump that I never contemplated when I joined Standard Bank. Then leading the securitization business through the global financial crisis, having to deal with regulators, having to deal with the board, coming to the attention of senior management very quickly because of the challenges, develops different skill sets. And then I led securitization. I put it back to health. And that was an important lesson from a leadership perspective, because I said to my team during the global financial crisis, we built this business, we will see it through in terms of restoring it to health. And that's what I did. And then I said, I want a new challenge. And the bank then asked me to take on structured trade and commodity finance. I knew nothing about structured trade and commodity finance. But another moment was I realized I knew how to run a business. I know what ingredients go into a successful business. And so I never pretended like I knew anything about structured trade, because I didn't. However, another leadership skill which Standard Bank allowed me and encouraged me to develop was to surround yourself with people who know more than you about certain subjects. And by bringing those people together and giving them a purpose and giving them a strategy, you have the ingredients for a successful business. And again, another leadership rule that I try and live by, which is to hire people who know more than you about certain subjects, and to not be afraid to do that. I'm a great student of successful leaders, and some of the successful leaders that I've studied surround themselves with the very best people they can find. And in that way, by giving people meaning and purpose in the business that you're trying to build, you create a successful structure. So that was another moment in my Standard Bank career. I was also given the opportunity to expand into other geographies. So I expanded, I took over and built the debt capital markets business for Africa. I was based in South Africa, and there wasn't much going on in local currency markets in other parts of Africa. And I said, that's where we must go. And one of my bosses said to me, you're creating new markets. And we were. And I get a real kick out of doing things that have never been done before, because it resonates with my personal story, is that I grew up on a farm in South Africa. I never thought I'd be the CEO of a Japanese bank in London. So Standard Bank gave me those opportunities to do things that had never been done before in the markets, but also things that I had never done before personally. And that's really what kept me there for 20 years, including the opportunity to come to London with Standard Bank 20 years ago to further expand into the international capital markets.
Wow. And to get those sorts of opportunities given to you and to take those on, the reputation that you developed internally, when was it in your career that you realized this is what I'm good at and this is what I enjoy? It's something that I talk to people about all the time in terms of, what are you known for in your career? So I'd be really interested to hear about that from your perspective as you developed and realized what it was that you were well known for and with those opportunities that were given to you.
Yeah, and that was a great moment maybe 10 years or so ago, where I started to realize through building new markets, through leading securitization back to health, to restructuring structured trade and commodity finance, I realized that I'm good at change. I'm good at leading businesses through strategic inflection points. And I enjoy taking businesses from state A to state B. For me, steady state is not appealing. Sometimes I wish it was, because it's sometimes easier. But I get a real kick out of leading and motivating teams to grow businesses, to take businesses to places that nobody thought possible or nobody thought could be done. And I really enjoy building teams, bringing in good people, and giving them a purpose and hopefully inspiring them to do things that they never thought were possible. So that is what I've realized that I enjoy doing, which is leading businesses and people through change, hopefully to a better place.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. And I think that's a really important part of career decision making. When you look at opportunities, and we'll come on to the role in which you took as CEO, but it's identifying what are the right roles for you as well, and what are the roles that are going to give you the best opportunity to do what you do best, versus taking roles for the sake of them. And we see it I use sport, and a lot of people use sport as a great analogy, because from a leadership perspective, it's so important. There are those coaches, managers out there that are well known for turning teams around or saving teams from relegation or pushing on for promotion and doing those things. And throughout your career, as you develop that reputation, it sticks with you, you become well known for it, and then you start to attract those opportunities like a magnet.
Absolutely. And I grew up in South Africa. I love sport, rugby, cricket, tennis. So the sports analogy really resonates with me. And that's probably something that you asked me what kept me at Standard Bank, and I hope you've given you a flavor of that. But that part of it about realizing that I needed to fulfill my potential, and I wanted to continue to grow in the space of leading a business through change, turning businesses around. That's what led me to leave Standard Bank after 20 years. And I'll always be enormously grateful to what Standard Bank taught me. But it was the opportunity to become a CEO and to be able to lead a business through the next phase of its development in another geography, in the international space, working with the Japanese, for example, which then led me to the Daiwa CEO role.
Let's come on to that then. So how did that come about, that opportunity, and what did that look like for you making that decision to step into the role?
That opportunity came about sort of towards the end of COVID 2021. And I was getting to the place within Standard Bank where I was looking for a step up in my career. And there were those conversations happening about positioning me for bigger roles. But then a headhunter reached out to me about the Daiwa role. And I sort of said to myself, wow, I didn't really know much about Daiwa. And I was a little skeptical, but I also said to myself, go into the process. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know what networks you're going to develop. And you never know what you're going to learn. And I met the Daiwa people. It all had to be online because it was during COVID, so quite challenging. But as I went through the process, I found two things that resonate with me in terms of me as a person and the roles that attract me. One is the opportunity for change, to lead businesses through change, because I found a business that had lost its way a little bit, and that was in need of restructuring, repositioning, and I felt I could do that. I could see. I'm not naive. I don't just rush into any Hail Mary situation. You've got to make an informed assessment of whether this is something you can turn around. But again, I saw some ingredients that I realized I could work with. And that leads me to the second part that I look for in a role as well, is not only the first part, which is an opportunity to play to my strengths and what I enjoy, which is turning businesses around, but I look for people and culture. Are these people that have similar values to me? Are these people that I believe I can motivate and inspire? And that is what I found at Daiwa. I found really good people who were very willing to learn and grow, but perhaps people who needed leadership and direction. And so I found those two ingredients. I found a business in need of change, but with the right ingredients, I felt I could impact positively. And I found people that I thought could walk that journey with me. And that's really what led me to the role. As I went through the process and I met more people, I started to understand the business better. It was a tough decision. I mean, it was 20 years in Standard Bank with a great path ahead of me. But again, I guess that's another one of my, hopefully, values, is to have courage. It took, have the courage of your convictions. It took courage for me to leave the farm in South Africa, go to university, come to London. But if you believe in yourself, and that took me a while to develop that. So I'm not suggesting by any means that I have a huge amount of confidence. But if you believe in yourself and you believe you can make an impact, have the courage of your convictions. And I said to myself, if I don't go and become the CEO of DCME when it was offered to me, I believed I would always regret it. And that's what led me to make that leap to take up that CEO role.
Brilliant. Wow. So you step into the CEO seat after that journey, and I can only imagine the process going through that, everything being online, the time that would have taken, building up to that moment where you're then the CEO, stepping into that seat. How did that feel, and what did you experience that you weren't expecting, and what did it give you that you were hoping for?
It was, you always go into a role expecting something. It was completely different to what I expected, in both a positive way and in a challenging way. And I remember my first day, 4th of January, 2022, as the new CEO of Daiwa Capital Markets Europe. And I remember walking in, and there were many people to greet me and welcome me. And I got the tour of the building and met lots of people, and then got shown to my office, and everybody left. And I was sitting at the desk, and I thought, what now? It's, it really hit me then. And it was a mixture of excitement. It's a new role. It's a greater platform. It's everything I'd been working towards. So there was that excitement, but there was also fear. I am now the responsible for this organization and for all of its people. It's a great privilege, but it's an enormous responsibility as well. And I remember, I can still feel it today, sitting here talking to you, feeling that mixture of emotions. And, I guess what I learned is, one of the first things I learned is, people talk about tone from the top, and we use it as a phrase quite easily. I really learned in my first CEO role, which I was not expecting, just how much the CEO sets the tone from the top. And it's things like the way I walk into a meeting room, where I sit in the room, how I speak to people, my body language. Is it positive? Is it negative? Because when you're the CEO, people are feeding off your every word and your every gesture. And so you have the ability to impact somebody's day, either very positively or very negatively. So this was another learning which I hadn't expected, is you have to be so mindful of everything that you do and how you do it. And I wasn't expecting that.
Amazing. I'm running a London business for a Japanese parent group across different cultures. Obviously, you worked across different geographies, lots of global experience before. What has that taught you as well from a cultural leadership perspective in terms of how you navigate that?
And that's been that was another thing that drew me to Daiwa, with its great Japanese heritage. I love different cultures. I love traveling to different parts of the world. I think when we come from different countries with different attitudes, different approaches, it brings us the richness of the human experience. And I love that. And I've learned a lot working with Japanese colleagues. I have enormous respect for the Japanese culture. There's a great amount of respect. There is a great amount of value for teamwork. And I've learned a lot about diplomacy, which I never expected. So in my South African way, I'm very direct. As South Africans, we say what we think, sometimes to our detriment. And I've learned the art, hopefully, of subtlety, because that's what the Japanese have taught me. Sometimes in certain settings, you may be feeling a certain way, but the way you communicate your point in a more subtle, diplomatic way means it will land better. And I've had to learn that sometimes in painful ways. But I love it. It expands my brain. It helps me develop different skills again. And I love the art of communication and meeting people where they're at. How can I tell you something in a way that will resonate with you? I often see my teams talking past each other. I can see two people having a conversation, and the one is saying something from their perspective, and it's completely missing the other person because they have a different perspective. And working with Japanese colleagues has really taught me to try and read between the lines and sort of meet people where they're at. And I've absolutely loved that part of it, although it's been quite frustrating at times as well.
You've hired and developed a lot of people. What do you look for, and what separates the people that really go the distance versus those who show promise but plateau?
It's a great question. And I think to address the first part, what I look for in hiring people is I don't start with technical skills. I start with attitude and mindset. Because I think if somebody has the right attitude, is curious, is open to learning, is willing to grow, is willing to embrace feedback, and has the right mindset, we can teach them technical skills. I think most people in our industry, when they get to the point of having an interview for a role, they have reached a certain level of technical capability. So for me, throughout the years, the people who I've hired that have been successful, and I'm going to come on to the second part, have started with the right mindset and the right approach and attitude and the right values, as opposed to being the most technically qualified candidate, because you can work with that. The second part that you asked about is what separates somebody who will go the distance from somebody who might plateau. And I've been a great student of this as well, watching people, because in our industry, everybody starts with a certain level of ability. But what makes somebody go further than somebody else? And for me, I've settled on one thing. It's the ability to learn and grow from feedback. The people that I've seen plateau are the people who are defensive and who are not open to listening to the feedback. And feedback is hard, and sometimes it stings. But if you can get over that and you can lean into that feedback and have a long, hard look at yourself and develop a different style or address that feedback in the way you engage with people, that's how you evolve and grow as a person, as a leader. And that's how you get to the next level. So for me, that's where I've settled on, is if I can see somebody who's willing to listen to feedback, take it on board and work with it, those are the people that I've seen be successful.
That's such an interesting point. I think to see that in people's careers, it can happen at different levels. But from my experience in over the years headhunting, it's those that have had those mentors that have, and those people developing them that have worked with them to get over that. Is that something that people should actively seek once they've got that feedback, versus those who say, I've got it, I can do it, I'll learn and I'll do it on my own? Or is there something to be said for collaborative development with the help of a mentor or colleague?
I think there's a lot to be said for collaborative development, because as human beings, we all naturally have blind spots. Whether we want them or not, we have them. And I think a collaborative approach allows you to benefit. It's a support mechanism as well, that you don't have to deal with these things on your own. Reach out, seek help, because there are many people highly qualified that I've had the benefit of. I have a great coach. I have some wonderful mentors. And this is important about how you select those people, because you can get feedback from a lot of people that may not necessarily be in your best interests. So you need to have a circle of trusted advisors, and it's usually a small circle, but it's the people that will tell you sometimes the things that you don't want to hear, but with your best interest at heart. And I've found in my career those people to have been very valuable in my own development.
How has the profile of the people banks are actually looking to hire changed since you started? And do you think the industry is better or worse at finding the right people?
Yeah, another great question. I think we're a little bit better, and I'll explain why. But I also think we can be better as well. So why do I say we're a little bit better? When I started 25 years ago, I was an anomaly. I had a legal background. Being in finance, that was an oddity, because generally investment banking in those days only really hired people from finance backgrounds. So it was a very limited pool of people. And then it started to evolve, people from mathematics and statistics backgrounds to go into derivatives and things like that. But still, maybe 10 years into my career, people with legal backgrounds in a front office role, I mean, in leading a business role, were unusual. So I think the industry has become better at attracting people from different backgrounds and different specializations. So not necessarily saying, well, in order to be in a front office or a client-facing role, you have to have a finance degree. I think we've become a lot better at widening the pool of people. Where I think we can do better is the people who rise to the top are still pretty narrow, and they still come from the traditional backgrounds of finance, accounting. And so I think we've widened the pool at the junior and the mid-levels, but I think at the senior levels, we still have challenges with looking at people in a more traditional way for CEO roles or executive committee roles, and be that from a gender perspective, from a background perspective, or from a technical perspective. I don't think we've widened enough at the top levels.
And then looking at the next generation of leaders, what do you think they're getting right? And perhaps where do you think they're falling short?
What I love about the next generation, and what I think they do better than what my generation did, is they question the status quo. When we started, or when I started, you didn't question, you did what you were told to do, because that's how it had been done, and you didn't really feel confident enough or that it was acceptable to question people higher up. I love that the new generation or the next generation say, why are we doing it like this? They feel confident enough to say, is there a different way? Is there a better way? And I think that is what's helping drive change. I think what they can do better is invest more in human relationships and less on technology, because the power of your network, the power of face-to-face engagement, the power of a mentor and a conversation, perhaps like we're having, cannot be replaced by a smartphone or AI or any of that. I think they've got to focus more on a human level interaction and continuing to develop those social skills, be it from an internal networking point of view, or when you're doing a deal with a client, you're still dealing with a person and a human being. And those social skills are very important.
Fascinating. Okay, great. You stayed 20 years at Standard Bank. In this day and age, retaining good people is as hard as finding them. What keeps someone at a firm in your experience, and what makes them leave?
I'll start with what it's not. It's not money that should keep someone at a firm. Sometimes people think it's money. I think if you are having someone who's staying purely for the money, there is misalignment because there's always somebody else willing to pay more. What keeps someone at a firm, I think there are two key ingredients to that. One is giving them a purpose. Why do I go to work every day? What is it that I'm contributing and achieving? And if I don't understand that purpose and feel like I have a role in contributing towards it, I think the job, it becomes a job. It's empty, it's hollow, it's something I do and I go through the motions. You know, for me, one of the first things I did at Daiwa was to define our purpose. Because I looked at the Daiwa Securities annual report, and it talked about aspiring to a society where everyone can live 100 years of life. That jumped out at me because I grew up in Africa, where sometimes people don't live beyond 50 years of age. And so I combined that. I said, we're a Japanese firm, and we need to enable longer, better lives. And that gave people a purpose to be motivated and inspired by. And I think that keeps someone in an organization. Another thing that keeps someone in an organization is what I spoke about in my 20-year career at Standard Bank, the opportunity to learn and grow and constantly evolve. And that doesn't mean getting bigger jobs and getting the top job one day. Some people are cut out for that and some people aren't. But giving you exposure or giving someone exposure to something different, allowing them to do things that they never thought possible, giving them a sense of growth and development, I think is what keeps someone at an organization. And conversely, what makes somebody leave is if they feel that they're not being seen and heard. They feel like their contribution is not being recognized, or they feel that they are not being given an opportunity to develop to their full potential. And we all want to be better than the people that came before us. And we want to leave something in a better state for the people that will come after us. And I think if you're giving people those opportunities, they will stay. But if you're not, they will go and find them elsewhere.
Megan, this has been so insightful. Thank you so much. I've got a couple of questions to wrap things up here. Advice for the next generation. So if someone's a few years into their career, let's say 10 years into their career, and they're wondering whether they've got what it takes to get to the top, what would you say to them?
I'd say believe in yourself, but I'd also say find out what you're good at, because you're not going to be good at everything. We're human. Nobody is. So find those things that you are good at, that you can bring as a unique contribution. Don't try and be like everybody else, because somebody once said to me, and it really resonated, there will only ever be one of you. So be the best version of that person. And that's what I say. I think I did it myself. I spent too many years of my career maybe trying to be good at everything until I discovered there's certain things that I'm good at. There are other things that I'm not good at. So let me focus and bring my secret sauce, my ability to influence and change. And so that's what I'd say. Find out what you're good at. Focus on those things and really become the best version of you.
Brilliant. You've had such an inspiring and incredible career so far to get where you have done. Is there anything you wish someone had told you earlier on in your career, or that you would go back and tell yourself?
Yeah, I'd say believe in yourself more. It took me a little longer to see or to believe in myself. I was fortunate in that I had various people who believed in me and challenged me and gave me opportunities. It took me a while to develop that confidence in myself. So what I would say to my younger self is, don't let others define what you can become. You define what you can become. And obviously, within reason, take advice, you have certain abilities, but you set your own limits. Don't let others set limits for you.
Brilliant. Megan, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your time, the insights given. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you, Bill. I've enjoyed speaking with you.
Thanks very much.